In this session, we are going to build Docker image of our demo Spring Boot DynamoDB service using CodeBuild. So basically our flow is user will commit some changes and will push the code change to our code repository, which is code commit in AWS, and we will create one code build project which will pull the code from code commit, will build the code, will create the Docker image and push the Docker image to AWS Elastic Container Registry. So let's first check our small Spring Boot DynamoDB service. Here is our Spring Boot DynamoDB service, which is the small Spring Boot application which I have created and using for this tutorial. Basically, this Spring Boot application connects to DynamoDB and fetches some records from DynamoDB table. There is a particular table created in DynamoDB. In our pom.xml, we don't have anything special, but for DynamoDB connection, we have this dependency AWS Java SDK DynamoDB, and we are using actuator, Spring actuator for checking health. In addition to that, we have one repository added over here. The reason is if you are using code artifact as one of the repository, then you have to add this repository portion in your pom.xml where you mention the URL for your code artifact. But in this particular project, we don't have any software package that we need to pull from our code artifact. But if you are creating a bigger application or bigger service for your production environment, definitely you will have multiple software packages in your organization artifactory. And I'm considering that organization artifactory is actually your code artifact, which is AWS provided artifactory. Then you need this configuration in your pom.xml of that project. Let me show you the code artifact. In one of the sessions in this tutorial, you will find that how to create the code artifact. Under service, search for code artifact. Here is the repository we have created. This is for software package repository. And here is our packages already pushed. Now, if you click on view connection instruction and on this drop down, you select Maven because it is our Maven type project. You will get all this connection details. In our code artifact session, I have mentioned it how to configure that. So basically, we are using this manual setup for pushing to your repository. So this is the part, just need to copy and paste it in your pom.xml if you want to push this software package to your AWS code artifact repository. Now let me show you the application.properties file. Only I have mentioned the server port, which I have created the custom port 8181. Declare the health endpoint for actuator, and as we are connecting to DynamoDB, definitely we need to share our access key and secret key and mention the DynamoDB region over here. So before deploying it, I will add my access key and secret key over here. Now let's move to the controller. We have one controller called transaction controller, which has two methods. One get, one post. Once we pass the transaction ID, it pulls the transaction record for that particular ID from DynamoDB. And for save, you can create a set of records in DynamoDB, the transaction record in DynamoDB. So these are the two methods we have. One get transaction and another is just save. I will share this complete code so you will get the download link from the resource slide. Now this is a very quick overview of our Spring Boot demo application which we are using in this tutorial. Now once we need to create a Docker image for this Spring Boot service, we need to create one file, that is Docker file. So let's create a Docker file. Click over this project, create file, Docker file. Click finish. Now in this Docker file, we actually need to mention what we want to do. So I'm just copying this small code snippet over here and let me explain. It says that use OpenJDK 8 Alpine version, expose 8181 port because we are using 8181, that is a custom port. And now our final build, which is a jar file, actually by this copy jar file command to app.jar, we are just renaming that jar file to app.jar and declaring one entry point over here. So just let me save it. Now when we will be building this project with CodeBuild, we need to create a build spec file as well. So again, create a new file called buildspec.yml. Click on finish. Now in build spec file, we have to define how we want this image to be built. In a build spec file, there is a specific format. Let me start with version. So version is the first which we have to declare. Version colon 0.2. It is the version I have declared. Now there are multiple phases. Declare the phases. Our first phase is going to be install. After install, we will have pre-build. These are the type of phases. At the end, you can mention the artifacts, the files it will be creating. So just declare artifacts for now. Now under every phases like install, pre-build, build and post-build, we have to run a set of commands. Suppose in install phase, we need to install few tools, like we need to install Java first. Okay, so we have to declare commands, and to install Java or OpenJDK or command it, as we will be using Ubuntu instance type, that's why we are using apt-get install OpenJDK 8. Now next thing, before Java, we want that instance to be updated first. So even before Java, let me use apt-get update. So in install phase, we are running two commands. One to update the instance and next install OpenJDK 8. Let's move to our pre-build. Pre-build means something you want to do before your actual build start. Again at pre-build stage, we need to run few commands. So again declaring commands. And what are those commands? Suppose you are writing an echo command that pre-build started. After that, let's do a maven clean install. Now at this stage, we have to declare the login information of our ECR, Elastic Container Registry, because at the end, we will be pushing our Docker image to our ECR. And to do that, we have a set of commands. I am just copying that commands and I am just copying the set of commands here. And let me explain you how it works. So as usual, that I'm setting one echo that it is login to Amazon ECR. Now at this point, we want to create a connection to AWS ECR, which is our Elastic Container Registry, because at the end of the build, we want to push our Docker image to the ECR repository. So let me paste here the code snippet on how to connect to our ECR. So here you can see that we have declared a image repo name, and I have declared it here. You can create environment variable and give a reference here. Giving environment variable and referencing over here, that's a good practice. But for now, I have just provided this repo name and repository URL over here. Now, this repository URL is actually we are getting from our ECR. Let me show you the ECR part. Under service, search for ECR. Click on the repository. In our previous session, you have seen that how we have created this ECR repository. This is our ECR repository and the repository is currently empty. So we need to copy this URI. So just copy this URI and paste it over here. And this is the part which is our repo name, and I have declared by this key here. That's why I'm just removing this part. Now we are creating this image tag, which will start with build and the build ID. Now we are going to write our build phase now. Again, in build phase, we will be writing some commands. Under build phase, we just simply want to build our Spring Boot application and create the Docker image. So it's nothing but I'm just doing one echo build started, Docker build -t, repository URL latest, and it is creating the tag with repository URL latest and our image tag. Only this we need at build phase, because in build phase simply we are just building the Docker image and creating the tag. Now post build is actually, as the name suggests, it is after build. So in after build we have something to do, which is we are declaring the commands again. At this phase we want to push the Docker image into ECR. Let me copy the code snippet and explain. Here I'm just doing one echo again, build completed that this echo pushing the Docker image now, and Docker push is the command to push the Docker image with this image custom tag and push Docker image again with the latest tag. Okay, and I'm doing one printf to create one image definition.json file over here. It will be required in our next sessions, and we are done with post build. And as artifact, as I said, we are creating two files. One is image definitions.json and another is actually our Maven build jar file of our Spring Boot project, which is under target. Let me save this build spec. Now let me tell you one thing. In our pom.xml, I showed you that how to mention the code artifact repository here. But code artifact repository definitely is not a public repository. So it will need authentication how your workspace, basically the code, connects to the code artifact repository. As I said, in this particular Spring Boot project, we are not pulling or pushing any software packages from code artifact. But I want to cover this part as well, that in your project, if you are using software packages which are in your code artifact repository, then you have to do one more thing in your build spec.yml. And that part is you have to share the authentication for your code artifact. And the authentication part is you have to share your settings.xml. Okay. And for that, at install phase, we will be adding this command over here, which is copy settings.xml to the M2 directory, which is under root. The build spec should copy your settings.xml to this root M2 settings.xml. Let me show you that under your project, we have this settings.xml also copied over here. And you can see that we have our repository mentioned over here. And this is the part which is the authentication part. In our code artifact session, I have shown it how to create this token and how to configure this settings.xml. And this settings.xml is nothing but the settings.xml file which you get under the .m2 directory in your system. So you have to copy that settings.xml and put it under the root of your project. So let's go back to our build spec and save it. So again, I am quickly summarizing our build spec, how we wrote this file. Build spec has specific sections. First is start with the version. Version we have declared 0.2. Now it has multiple phases, and phases like install, pre-build, build, post-build. As the name suggests, installment, before starting anything for build, you need few prerequisites to be installed. In our case, we wanted that this settings.xml to be copied at root m2 settings.xml. We provided our settings.xml at the root of the project directory. Then we want to update the build instance first. As we are going to use Ubuntu image for this code build, that's why we have used this apt-get update. The next part is apt-get install OpenJDK 8, because we have created our Spring Boot application with Java 8. That's why we are installing Java 8 as prerequisite. Next, our pre-build tasks, which is before building, what are the tasks we need to complete? Before building, we have to log into our Amazon ECR, which is Elastic Container Registry. And this is the part we have done this login, declared the image repo, and formed this repository URL. Now at build phase, we are just doing the build by docker build -t repository URL tag. That's it. After build, we need to push the Docker image to our ECR. And that's why we are doing this Docker push image tag and Docker push latest. And we have created this image definitions. And as artifacts, we have two files. One is image definitions.json and another is the jar file of our Spring Boot app. Now let's push these changes to our code commit, because we have created this build spec YML Docker file. Let's go to our project directory and open the command prompt. Here check the git status. Now do a git add. Now just commit, do git push, and we have pushed our changes. Now remember that before pushing the changes to our code commit repository, I added the access key and secret access key in the application.properties. Since it is confidential, that's why I didn't expose that. Okay, so first let's go to our code commit, and it's showing that our code commit repository is last modified 1 minute ago. We have very recently modified it. That's fine. Now let's go to code build. Under service, search for code build. Click on create build project, give a name, scroll down. Source provider is our AWS code commit. If you are using GitHub, then you can select the GitHub and you have to connect to the GitHub, but we are using here code commit. The repository is AWS Tech Guide. Reference type is branch, because we will be building from master branch. Select the branch. We have two branches. One is a dev branch, master branch. We have pushed our change to master branch, so selecting master branch. Now under environment managed image, use an image managed by AWS CodeBuild. This is the operating system type you want to select your image, and we are selecting Ubuntu, and that's the reason when we have created our build spec, we have used the commands accordingly. Click on runtime, select standard, select image, the latest one, standard 4.0. Environment type is Linux. Now check this option, enable this option. Enable this flag if you want to build Docker images. And yes, in our case, we are going to build a Docker image. Service role. Let's create a new service role over here. Okay, so it is trying to create a new service role. That's fine, but do copy this name of this role, because we have to add a few more policies in the service role. The reason is, when it is creating by default, it doesn't add the permission for code artifact or ECR. But in our case, in our build spec, we will be trying to connect to ECR. We will also try to connect to our code artifact. Then it will fail. So that's why we are not doing any additional configuration over here. Let it as it is. We are not selecting the VPC as well. Not doing any batch configuration. Now here is the artifacts. Now we are not selecting any artifact over here. Now under logs, we have two options. Select CloudWatch and or S3. So for now, let's use CloudWatch log and give a group name so you can identify it clearly, and click on create build project. It has created the code build project. Now before moving further, let me go to IAM and modify the role it has created for code build. So I'm going to roles, search the role, select it. And as you see, by default, the role has been created. It has only the policies for your code build and CloudWatch, but we need few more policies to attach. That's why click on attach policies, search Elastic Container Service, or easy to search as registry. So you will get EC2 container registry full access, or I will suggest don't go for the full access, give it a power user access. For now, I am giving it a full access, attach policy. Next again, attach policy, we are using code artifact read-only access. And that's it for now. Let's go back to our code build project, and our code build project has been created. Now let's start the build. Click on start build. Project is already selected. It is a single build going to be. Scroll down. These are predefined already. Source, code commit, and the reference type is from branch. From master branch, we are going to build it. Click on start build. It has started the build. It usually takes few minutes to complete it. You can see the build logs under this window. If you can scroll down. Also, if you click over this view entire log, it will open your CloudWatch log. And here in CloudWatch, you will get the entire log separately. As you see that the log group we created, AWS TG Demo, Spring Boot, DynamoDB, it is under this. This is the log stream which is being created. It is still in progress. Click on phase details and you see that these are the phases has been completed. So it says submitted, queued, provisioning, download source, install, pre-build, build, post-build, upload artifacts, finalizing, completed successfully. And our build status is also succeeded. So what does this mean? That we can expect our Docker image has been pushed to ECR. So let's search ECR, click on repository, and here is our Docker image has been pushed. You can see that there are two tags for this image. One is latest and another is this, the bigger tag name. Okay, and it has pushed here successfully. Now this is the end of code build part because we successfully created our Docker image and pushed it in the container registry. In next sessions, we will see how we can pull this Docker image and deploy. Let's move to next session.